Welcome to the Business podcast. I'm your co-host, JP John Paz for the two-man power trip. Of course, joining me is my co-host, the financial wrestling genius himself, the doctor, the distinguished doctor, Mr. Lavie Margolin. Lavie, how you doing today, sir?
I'm doing well, John. Last week, of course, you broke the news about Wrestling Central. So as a doctor, I had to reflect and analyze. So I'm better prepared this week to give some more insight to hit us off.
I love that. I love their little title belt logo that they've got going for Wrestling Central, which, of course, will be the NWA and the WOW, POP, yeah, right. Women of Wrestling as well. The WOW is going to be Roku's newest fast channel under the Paramount Global brand. Tell us all about Wrestling Central.
So one of the unique elements of it is that it's really gathering two brands that are kind of on the periphery of the national consciousness, in that they're both well, they could be well financed. We don't know how much the owners, who are each individually wealthy in their own ways, choose to dedicate to such projects. They're certainly financially conservative in terms of the way that they do business, but you have both wealthy people and celebrities. Of course, Billy Corgan of the Smashing Pumpkins runs the NWA, and Jeannie Buss, best known from the Lakers family ownership, who runs Women of Wrestling. So to dive into it a little bit more, there could be several benefits, beyond the channel. But just to focus on the channel for a moment, as we learned last week, and we've seen this, it's hard, and it wouldn't seem like it would be, but it's hard to make money or even remain as a fast channel, even if the capacity is unlimited, or maybe somewhat unlimited, in that a streaming service would want a finite amount of channels so that it could have the opportunity or the room to market those channels. But as we saw with the wrestling channel in the past, that was gathering a variety of libraries, as we talked about last week with the Savoldi's fast channel, it doesn't always justify the effort to be there. So it'll be interesting to see on Roku, with Paramount distributing and programming this channel with NWA and WOW content, if enough people are drawn to it. And I don't think, as it stands right now, that a lot of people will be. So people don't necessarily seek out WOW content and even NWA content, even though they have some visibility. I think in the press release, there was some room to sort of draw from more sources. And I'd imagine that if they worked out the deal, Billy Corgan can bring in his Houston library, and I think he owns some other historical libraries as well. So you have that content to work with. And I think you're going to need more to make a channel like this work and have it be a thing. Obviously, you're not going to have WWE collaboration, so you really have to consider where else that might be coming from. But just like the other channels, the time will tell. But there is a WOW streaming channel already that still exists. We'll have to see if the AAA one that's been around a while remains, now that the majority of ownership is WWE. The TNA one has been around forever, and Anthem has been really good about programming fast channels and getting those out there, from the Fight Network to Access and beyond. So that's that. But now looking at the benefits of the collaboration, NWA, of course, has been seeking distribution partners, and has made, such as through the CW app and X. There had been talk that they would be on the CW. Whether it had anything to do with Sami Zayn and mimicking Coke use in an angle, or it was always going to be WWE. They've kind of been on the periphery and distributing through X. Now, Paramount Global has been distributing WoW for 3 seasons thus far, 100% syndication. When we got the ratings, they were relatively good. What would be really interesting is to see if NWA is ultimately distributed by syndication. And I think that there's a lot of benefit there, because WoW and syndication, there's not really like a next step for a fan. Like, okay, you can go to their website, follow them on social media. I just don't see like that 60-year-old average that's watching over-the-air TV to be like, oh, okay, I need a WoW t-shirt through Pro Wrestling Tees. But the NWA has more ability to maximize this, especially promoting their live events. If they get 100% distribution for syndication, of course, you could promote your Chicago events on the Chicago affiliate and so on. That only has a certain amount of residents, but there's a lot more to do. Now, of course, I think over the last year, I'm not sure when it changed, the NWA doesn't utilize their marquee events as pay-per-views or premium live events. They more chop it up for weekly programming. But if they want to return to that model, you'd have more ability to promote that. But that's, obviously a couple steps ahead.
When you look at it, though, like,
oh, sorry, John.
Like, I was going to say, when you look at it, like, and you're looking at like them doing that, do you like that they do that though? Because like, if you're there, it's cool because it's a big show. But do you like that they break up their big shows like that?
I think it takes something away from. I guess it's sort of like, what are you going towards? If it's like, okay, the only way we're kind of getting out there, and we don't know if the deal with X like has a monetization element or they're just streaming it, that it takes away from the events. I guess the cost is down so much, right? Like in terms of distributing it through the internet, like it's a huge difference, of course, from like the satellite days. I don't know, John, do they have their broadcasters there in person, or do they do it like in the studio later?
No, I think they're there in person, as far as I know, because I saw them both there. Yeah.
Okay, so then you're cutting. It's not a cost difference there. So I guess, and we'll get into Triller very soon, but like there should be a way to like monetize it, or at least like stream it as like a special event. And then you could do like sort of like the New Japan model where you could have it as like a pay-per-view, and then you could chop it up later. So sort of like meet both masters. But I guess maybe the returns were so low, it sort of like wasn't worthwhile to do so thus far. So that's one element. Next is the sharing of talent. So, and we'll get into in a moment how WoW recruits, some of its newer talent. But for the most part, WoW is recruited more towards typical Hollywood means. Women with no wrestling experience are given tryouts and then signed to short-term contracts to participate in multi-day tapings that cover most of, if not all, of the season of WoW. And this goes right all the way back to the Glow days for those that watched on Netflix and so on. That talent doesn't often migrate outside of its own universe. Awkwardly, and if WoW and the NWA have a relationship, what is their name? Like the Tonga twins, or
yeah,
they just made their debut in the NWA like right after this news was announced. But obviously, these are still two separate promotions. The NWA could have access to a fresh set of talent that has been underexposed and add some variety to its programming. On the other hand, WoW may benefit from some unique women's wrestlers that don't fit into its typical approach. Imagine NWA standout Natalia Markova on the season of WoW. As I mentioned, both promotions exist in their own disparate corners of the pro wrestling niche. The promotions could shine a light on each other through social media and applicable clips on each other's programming. Finally, in that regard, 1 second. Okay. Is the residence of the owners of both brands in like sort of raising both ships? Like I'd imagine most TV programmers and like people in media, like, not necessarily that they'll do a deal. Obviously, we've seen, especially with the NWA, it's a struggle. Like, if a representative Billy Corgan comes to call, you'd probably be like, okay, I'll take the meeting. Or Jeannie Buss from the Lakers comes. But, like, imagine a pitch that includes both of them together, so that really would raise things. So collaboration is essential. So again, like, this might be a whole lot of nothing, meaning that Paramount may have come to NWA and WoW separately and be like, well, we have this opportunity. Do you want to be involved? And both signed off on it, and they may not be collaborating at all. But I just think that there's a lot more to go on. So sort of in the moment last week, there was a number of questions that I had that I tweeted out. So let's see if we can resolve those that we just didn't talk about in a moment. Will there be a new WoW Season 4 in syndication? So this is a question. I'd imagine if things were going well with Paramount Global, unless this is sort of like a pivot, to be like, okay, the syndication thing isn't working anymore, but we still want to work with you. We're really focused on fast channels and making money that way. Let's just do it that way. But we don't know yet. John, usually get the press. I mean, you do get the press releases, and I don't, but usually get the word before I do. Do you remember when the season, like the new season, is usually announced? It's usually pretty late. Like, it's not like a traditional schedule where you hear like in early spring, okay, it's renewed. It's kind of like around this time, or like early June, or maybe even a little bit later, right?
Yeah, usually, if I remember correctly, it's usually a little bit later.
Okay, so we'll have to wait on that. Will this replace the existing WoW Fast Channel? So that's the one I have a definitive answer on, because in the moment I didn't distinguish, because I use, thanks on your recommendation, John, the Roku to watch Pluto. So in my mind, they're the same, but they're not. So Pluto is the platform that currently has the WoW Wrestling Fast Channel. So it will not replace it. So as we were talking about last week, how else can WoW monetize what they're doing? Well, they found a way. So props to that. Could this lead to the NWA being syndicated over the air? I think that's like, if WoW is going to continue, I think that's like a hope of this deal, and it would make a lot of sense. Will this replace NWA distribution to X? We'll know once this kicks off, but the way it was described, that there would be like a new weekly show from both programs. I don't know if it would be a replacement of anything or additional. So now moving like a little bit more into the promotion specific. So we had talked about the NWA and how ticket sales looked a little slow for what they were doing in regards to the 2300 arena. But there was a picture, and you can never tell from a picture where people are shifted or whatever, but it looked like a good attendance in the end. So kudos to them on that. One thing that I wanted to note that isn't necessarily news in regards to WoW, but it's just like in reflection. WoW last gathered their troops for a WoW live in Las Vegas. I'm not sure if that was intended for air in their weekly programming, but that was September. But really, they were taping last over like 2 sets of 2-day tapings in August. So now it's late May, and there's no tapings on the books. So like, you have to consider talent, especially like newer talent, like being stretched in that way of like having to perform multiple times over multiple days rather than like stretching it out a bit. But in terms of revenue savings and monetization, that's impressive. You stretch $1. We had talked about how they were taping and earning some, like, it seemed like some Chamber of Commerce credits where they were taping. So they know how to stretch $1 there. Now, John, I know we've talked about this, but I always like have to remind myself. Let me see if I have that number. Where'd it go? So in January, they were they had recruited female performers 18 to 30, no experience required. and I think it was, shoot, I wish I had grabbed the rate, but it was like a good rate for like starting out, but it was just for a few months, so including your training, and that was it. So a relatively low rate, like tens of thousands of dollars in total. But then that's it. So speaking of like WoW and what they prioritize, and like kind of it's been working for them, right? Because it's a mainstream over the air product, so they're not necessarily looking to like delve deeply into like, who has the most Purisu cred from Marigold, right? Like that's not going to increase their numbers over the air with people between 60 and 70 watching. So they use Paola from the 90 Day Fiance program, which we've talked about, and she was there. There was a licensing convention that a number of companies were tweeting out about because it's a big deal. But Paola Mayfield, so she was, the face for them in that way. So interesting to see, like everyone goes left, they go right, but they've got, I don't know about their profitability or not, but they're certainly finding their own niche, which is very different from everyone else.
It's very interesting, the world of like that, to see what's going to happen. I love Roku and I love those channels. It's just interesting to see, like, is there enough pieces of pie, if you will, to spread around WWE, AEW, MLW, NWA. I mean, just interesting to see that.
I think that there's like, I know it hasn't worked, in some ways in terms of like hodgepodge fast networks, but like to me, there's something to it, right? Like people that are using fast, just like putting on pro wrestling and streaming it and so on in a way that appeals. I guess people could like just go into a loop on YouTube or whatever, but I think it's important, like whatever platform people are using, to find a way. I think that just to make it work, they're going to need to diversify, the type of content that they have. And certainly if they're using Corgan's archives, that will be helpful.
So I know you love Curacao, and I know you love to talk about the financials of the Curacao. So why don't we talk a little bit about Cyberfight and some of the financials as far as some of the Japanese wrestling scene?
Yeah, I think one of the shame about AEW coming to prominence, and certainly it's been good for the industry, jobs, and all this pro wrestling content, is that pro wrestling reporters have kind of forgotten about Japan, and doing deep analysis. Is kind of like,
yeah,
I think I'm not not saying I'm whatever, but I go to Bushi Road. I'm like, here's the quarterly reports, they're out. Can someone do something with it? And then, people find their way to it. But like before, it'd be like, oh my gosh, here's the financials, here's how they're doing. Whereas like, there's only so much time and so on. I guess that's the basis of our podcast, right? Covering things that aren't covered as well. But so first of all, thank you to GameBiz.jp. They just discovered them. They're an amazing resource for business news, and you could look up Cyberfight, Bushi Road. They have like great financials. So certain things about Cyberfight that hadn't come out before. First of all, I mean, and this is easy to see, but outside of GameBiz, Cyberfight is a near $4 billion company in US dollars. So like they're what I call the sleeping giant of the pro wrestling industry, kind of like the same way that I would think about Sinclair Broadcasting when they owned Ring of Honor. They weren't apparently investing a lot in Ring of Honor, but like there was a lot of potential there. But why aren't they necessarily investing so much? Cyberfight in the fiscal year September 2024 reported a financial loss of 212 million yen, widening the deficit and becoming insolvent. The company also operates DT Pro Wrestling Noah, DDT Pro Wrestling Noah, and Tokyo Joshi Pro. Cyberfight's financials for the fiscal year 2024 showed a widening deficit with a loss of $212 million. The company is now in debt. The final loss for previous fiscal year, September 2023, was 104 million yen. This was revealed in the financial results announcement published in the official Gazette on December 16th. The company is part of Cyber Agent Group and operates DDT, Noah, and Tokyo Joshi Pro, as well as video distribution sites such as Wrestle Universe and Abema, where it broadcasts matches. And we'll be talking about that a little bit more later. So, interestingly, huge company. As of the last financial numbers we can get, and I assume we'll be getting more from this resource later, is that they are losing money. I'm not sure how a division of a company that has that much money would be considered insolvent. That might be a subtlety of the translation used. Again, it was Google Translate. But some other news that sort of like informs Japan, and this is obviously smaller pieces of information related to Cyber Fight, Cyber Agent. Cyber Agent announced in April that Pro Wrestling Noah, operated by Cyber Fight, has signed an annual sponsorship contract with Line Yahoo. Line Yahoo has been announced as a special sponsor of events to be held at Ryogoku Kyogin Sumo Hall. As a result, the name of the event has been changed, and it's a sponsorship related name there. So, interestingly, in terms of Noah, okay, so there's a lot more Cyber Fight stuff you can find on the website. I'm going to skip over that for now. New Japan and Brandon Thurston and John Pollock did a great job in covering these financials. But while Bushiroad has had a comeback in stock price, one of its categories has been underperforming, according to its May 15th presentation materials. In categories against various units, such as solid and steady, its sports division is listed as soft. Now, interestingly, I don't know what happened with these other things. I think Bushiroad had like a kickboxing or shootboxing divisions for a while too. But now it's just pro wrestling. So when you look at profits and losses and categorizations from the company, it's just New Japan and Stardom. So it's listed as soft. So New Japan's contributions to profits are listed as limited. Net sales in the category were 1850 yen, an increase of 33 million, the highest net sales in 2 years. So I'm not sure why that's soft, but I'll leave it up to them. Operating profit increased. Last quarter was a loss. Sales were increased because of a 2-day Tokyo Dome shows. I think it was 24,000, 16,000 listed. So that was disappointing. Some sort of recovery trend that was gradual. To increase its fan base, more wrestler appearances are scheduled, and the promotion debuted in Okinawa. In regards to both promotions, promotional activities took place across Japan. So this is an interesting circular thing, John, where maybe it was like lost in translation. So how do they plan to increase live events? By continuing to conduct live events. So definitely not a Nick Khan strategy.
Yeah, definitely not. Interesting. That's I don't know, maybe opposite of what you would think. Do you think though, when AEW, Forbidden Door, stuff like that, do you think that helps or hurts them after the fact? I know during the show it's usually sold out. It's usually like the best show of the year, and they usually have a lot of good shows. So that kind of says a lot about those shows. But do you think that it actually helps or hurts them after the fact, like after the show?
Yeah, so I think like especially doing the North American shows, from what we heard, I don't know for sure, certainly, like that it's a rights fee. So like AEW just pays them a bulk amount, and then they could use the talent in the name rather than like ticket sales split, which probably would be the better way for them to go. But like it now that's going to be in London also, that's a very high profile, successful show too. I think that helps them a lot. It's actually the thing keeping them most relevant in mainstream pro wrestling right now. I don't think like having a show in New York, Chicago, Toronto, and then New Japan wants to run there 4 months later makes a difference. I don't think more fans would have gone to a singular New Japan show, who made an effort to go to Forbidden Door. But on the other side, I don't think, and again, a market I don't know anywhere nearly as well, and don't understand all the subtleties, although always learning. I don't think like Ring of Honor and AEW coming over like for a hodgepodge show in the Tokyo, and maybe it even like hurt because it wasn't like an appealing category. But the thing, like, to wrap up Bushiroad and the financials from a bow, is that the stock prices recovered. I believe every other category was listed, more favorably. So if it continues to be soft, and at least 2 quarters we've seen that, will it continue to fit in their portfolio, or maybe they'll look, to sell it?
Interesting. Oh, we'd be all over that if that happened. We'd be all over that sale.
Yeah,
sure.
I think like people always talk about, okay, Tony Khan, but like it wouldn't make sense. And I think like if you have the right people running it in Japan, that would be its own thing. But to become like a subcategory of AEW, like Ring of Honor, obviously is kind of like nothing on the scene now. Like, okay, so some people,
Right. Yep.
subscribe to Honor Club, or maybe it's legacy subscriptions, and you have those tapings, but it's really nothing.
What about TNA Wrestling? What's going on with it? They were kind of hot. Maybe are they cooling off, or what's the latest with TNA?
Yeah, so let's see, like in terms of like a ground by ground basis. So Brampton, Ontario, it's finally here, John. As we're recording this, the first of the 2 night swing in Brampton, and continuing on in Canada to third night. The 23rd and 24th, like, I think those are going to be really good numbers. As we've talked about for weeks, Asper home court advantage, his minor league basketball team is there now. And the reserve tickets seem to be sold out right away. There was no like Mike Johnson like hinting at like, oh, it's going to be record-setting crowd, which tends to drop from like a PR perspective. But I think those are going to be really good, at least relatively so. Now the border brawl, we're going to see May 25th. Obviously, I assume they're getting like a rights fee for this. It's kind of an awkward thing. I don't think Trudeau or Donald Trump or someone else is going to be there. It's kind of embarrassing. So I think the trade-off. I couldn't. Thank you for sending me those PR releases, John. By the way,
I love those.
I couldn't even make it through, and I didn't even have like a motivation to contact like the PR person from the streaming service. Probably would have been fun to have a discussion, but something about it just annoys me. But they've stopped talking about like Quinton Rampage Jackson, who was one of my favorite MMA fighters, Brutus Beefcake, and so on. I don't know what they're going to be doing, but it should be something notable one way or another. I'm not sure if I'm going to download the service to see it, but maybe we'll get some good clips. But what else is going on? So like in terms of like judging, I would say like forget the border brawl. It's an outlier, but Brampton is definitely a win. Okay, so the Mullet or Mullet Arena, June 6th and 7th, Tempe, Arizona. I think it's like a 4,000 or 5,000 seat building. Obviously, there's no expectations of that. We're a few weeks out. 963 and 757. It's kind of like probably too big a venue to run, but kind of what they're doing now. Even further out, obviously, is the shows in the Pittsburgh area, Moon Township, Pennsylvania. Venue about the same size at UPMC Event Center, 847 and 950 tickets out the door for tapings. Obviously over 1,000 is impressive, but it's a big venue. Tickets distributed for Belmont Park at the UBS Arena Slammiversary. So kind of like holding steady. Why? Because a little bit of like a market correction from WrestleTix. So some sections seem like they were gone, but they had to be returned and wherever it may be. So we're still sticking at about 2,750 as of the last count. Now, John, a curious thing that, first of all, somebody else had tweeted out and I shared it, but then I thought back on it. July 19th, you have the GCW Coney Island show, which is Santana still active at TNA? by the
Yeah.
way?
Yep.
Okay, so you have
Yep.
Masha Slamovich, Santana, what's his name? Cardona. Is Cardona still with TNA, or he pops in and out, right?
He's kind of technically right now feuding with Steve Macklin, so he's kind of
Okay.
in and out.
Okay, so you have let's assume like at least 3 of marquee talents on both sides that are doing like show in Coney Island, which is a cool thing at the Brooklyn Cyclones. And then you have TNA Slammiversary in Belmont Park. Now, they're both, fairly commutable. If somebody has a car, they're just a half-hour distance. I know SummerSlam is like just a couple of weeks ahead of that, or later than that. But do you think there's something like, I don't know of anything where the promotions actually directly talk to each other, but do you think there's something could be done? Because it's kind of like it's a unique weekend and like 2 unique shows based on the venues that like maybe there's like something to be done with like co-promotion or like, an alternate like fan gathering type of thing.
I think it would be a good idea. I think more of the co-promotion would kind of be not needed, but wanted. I think they should do that. Why not? You know what I mean? I think it would only help both brands and both shows succeed.
Yeah, for sure. I'm also curious, and I guess I'll save this for GCW with the Brooklyn promotion. But Romy dropping some more another thread on X. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yep.
So another interesting thing, like on the ground, something I hadn't thought about, like during that Attitude Era when like people would be doing the flashbulb pictures and so on, like it makes it seem bigger than it is. So like basically TNA was looking to, in a positive way, looking to sort of like manufacture or recreate that moment. What if we could make that happen again using every fan's phone camera? Enter Connect with Q, a company I worked with during my time at VNN. They build audio-triggered mobile light shows for teams like the Celtics and Lasers. The tech integrates into apps like TNA Plus, which we controlled, meaning even AEW and WWE couldn't pull this off. Here's how it would have worked. Fans enter the arena, open TNA Plus before Joe Henry's entrance. Our custom entrance theme triggers phone flashing in sync. Right as Joe hits his spin, the light pops, phones flashing, fans losing it factor. The tech could also trigger arena-wide selfie moments, live videos, and so on. So just like an interesting approach, which is always fun to see. Obviously, you have to warn people who might have, seizures. And no joke, I think there was like a Pokemon episode once in Japan that sent like, because it was very well watched, X percentage of people. So you just have to warn people, but obviously that's something you can figure out. But kind of like fun stuff. And again, a shame that, these type of ideas, even if not this one, like aren't being utilized in the same way from TNA, and you lost some of that knowledge base.
So what is going on with GCW? They got a lot of shows coming up.
Yeah, so Luis Perez of PW Ponderings, of course. We are the official business podcast, former guest of the show. I think episode 99. He knew, or he felt strongly that it was not going to be a mall show, John. So I was wrong. He had a sense it was going to be where a former guest of the show, the Arrival, had run shows in the past. So same area, John, but no mall show, unfortunately. So what's coming up? So just run through and then we'll talk about them. June 8th, obviously June 7th and 8th, of course, Atlantic City, New Jersey, Showboat. June 20th, Little Rock. June 22nd, Kansas City. July 4th, Backyard Wrestling. See, Brett, give John a call. He should be invited to the backyard shows. I'm not sure if they've done it in New Jersey in a few years. So I feel
Usually Delaware, I think. Yeah.
Oh, is it Delaware? Okay, you have that CC exemption, right? Like somebody could for CZW, right? When Nick Gage nearly died on the farm, and they still didn't find a way to ban it. So anything goes as long as it happens in your backyard.
Yep, that's true.
July, although not in Texas. I'm not sure if we talked about the story on here. Like somebody that really was gaining momentum for their promotion, and then neighbors complained, whole mess. But anyway, Hartford, next day, the Webster. So I guess they can't be too far from Connecticut, so maybe that's a clue, depending on the talent that they're using. July 8th, July 11th, Dallas, 19th, Coney Island, 28th to 30th, Tokyo, 1st and 2nd, Rutherford, New Jersey at the Williams Center. August 14th and 15th, Gathering of the Juggalos. 23rd and 24th, back to AC. September 12th, Detroit. 13th, Indianapolis in a park. September 19th, Phoenix, the Nile Theater. September 20th, so newly back to Ukrainian Culture Center, Los Angeles. So LA is getting a little spoiled for GCW in that somebody's like, well, they're taking a break for like 3 months, but they're always in LA. September 28th in Electric Ballroom. Obviously, that's Bloodsport. And October 4th in Anchorage. So let me give some more color to this, if you will. So Joppa, Maryland, which looked a little suspect in the Eventbrite. It's obviously a very small venue, training center, I think, also. MCW's. They packed it out, so a win there. Back to Rochester, that looked pretty packed out, so a successful weekend in small venues in retrospect. Tournament of Survival, doesn't look like they're going to add more than 7 reserved rows, just GA remaining, so a win for that. Cage of Survival, John, still an opportunity. 4th row and beyond still available. Little Rock at the Hall, kind of slow, but front row and ringside just have 1 ticket remaining, so picking up. Kansas City has, again, interestingly, more 3rd row tickets distributed, but seats available in most venues. The Webster in Connecticut has 3rd row and beyond tickets remaining. No, what's this one? Oh, July 11th in Dallas. So that's the AEW weekend. 2nd row has 8 tickets remaining and beyond. Anchorage. So it's interesting. They're going to, if I found the right venue, like all the way to Anchorage, Alaska for like a rec center, which according to the website costs $450 an hour to rent out. But rather than like an ego thing, and obviously Brett is focused on the bottom line because it's it's his livelihood on the line, but like to check off Alaska all the way for what's likely to be a small crowd, I have questions. The closest point from the US, if my Google mapping was right, is like a couple thousand miles. So it's not like he's okay, unless they're running a show in Russia or something, which would be very interesting. It's kind of a schlep out there for what I assume is little return, but maybe like people on want to stream something from Alaska, they're curious. July 19th. So the Bash at the Ballpark. So interesting show. Very curious. I think the success key, and this is like a key for pro wrestling in ballparks, is how much promotion will the ballpark give you. So I'm going to try and monitor, the website and that sort of thing. I don't plan to go to any games this year out there to know for sure, but between now and then, like how much promotion, because once it becomes like an event that peaks, you could do really well. I don't know how much promotion the Staten Island Ferry Hawks give the little person wrestling, but last year that was like one of the highest attendances for pro wrestling in the US, and they're doing it again this year. Maybe they've done it already. I'm not sure of the date. So back to Rutherford, New Jersey. So Williams Center, really nice looking venue that Arrival has run before. So 2 days for that. So maybe the best way to go. So we finally come up on it, John. The rest of the wrestling world has finally noticed that there might be some problems with Triller.
Yeah, that's so interesting. What is going on with Triller? Because AEW is on Amazon now. Well, they have been, but they're on Amazon, YouTube TV. So that's kind of a change up. So what's going on?
Yeah, so that seems to trigger, like, especially not like trigger in an upsetting way, but like Dave Meltzer, like sort of trigger, like, okay, let me to Square Triller. So to me, I don't feel AEW moving away from US distribution of their pay-per-views on Triller is like a huge sign of anything yet, because they have AEW Plus, where that day that everyone was talking about it, Triller tweeted out about their deal, or maybe even they sent a special deal about it. So I had a joke like, are they trolling us? Because everyone's talking about it. But I think that, and I have no idea, but like if Triller was behind on paying AEW, and they could be doing this quietly, putting the screws to them, but that they would like file suit, or if they're threatening, we don't know, that there's money owed. Because Arrival had told us about, some obviously relatively different multiples, but of money owed for a show. I'm not sure if it was one show or two. And then, maybe it's a counting issue or whatever it may be, but like, I think like AEW wouldn't let themselves get played. So maybe this is the first step where they're like, okay, like we'll take away the US, and if you keep messing with us, the Europe will fall too, or something like that. But to me, that's not like the bellwether, the problem. I think everything else is behind the scenes. So something Meltzer had said, which I wasn't aware of, was that, I don't know if all, but some Triller employees are 3 months behind on pay. We saw the person that was the president of Triller Plus and one of the executives of Bare Knuckle, who I thought was still active at the company, leave to go to BK something else, Bare Knuckle, that's actually on or will be soon, has a deal with Vice. So that was like, surprising there. Now, Bobby Axelrod, who covers pro wrestling, business is pretty deeply, said, according to an inside source, BKFC is quietly seeking new investors to facilitate a buyout from Triller and shift to new ownership. So that's something we were aware of. That who's the owner of BKFC? Like Feldman?
Is it him? I'm not sure.
Okay. He always seems like, and kudos to him, he's like, he built out like a new category of like combat sports, but he always seems like he's going to implode from the pressure. He always seems like so stressed out.
Conor McGregor, part owner, and David Feldman. Yeah. So McGregor as well.
Yeah. So, and that quickly became, a liability. And there's a lot of like Fight Opinion has covered this, and I just don't know enough about it to say too much, but like, it seemed like, right, there was loans they were getting from like an offshore company, and like we don't know how much ownership has been given up of like overall of Triller, and like, or loans coming due. It's just too complex for me, but it seems like a whole mess. Triller trading below $1, so it's at 80 cents as of this moment. It was down a little bit more yesterday. Now, a Fight Oracle said that Bob Diamond, Atlas Merchant Capital, is suing Triller. Diamond is the former CEO of Barclays, so he's got money to bleed them out. I didn't look at the whole findings. We also talked about their potential delisting for not filing in a timely manner. So, a lot of signs of trouble here. So I wanted to go back to an article that I wrote in September, sort of like when the AGBA and Triller merger looked a little bit unsteady, and that ultimately happened. So, whatever their distributions agreement with the AEW are at the moment, they have them. Triller maintains a variety of distribution agreements for the brands like AEW, GCW, and TNA. However, here and there are reports of delays in payment or non-payment. The Fight acquisition never met the full potential that Triller could seemingly provide. Fights featuring celebrity talents or high-profile rap battles were kept separated and were given a bigger spotlight from the company. So could Triller just go away if problems persist? I think that's very possible, John. Like, it just breaks up and then people figure out where they need to distribute it and so on. Or would there be an opportunity to sell off assets piece by piece, and who would buy it? So, like, in terms of the pro wrestling business, who would it affect? I think, like, the independents, like outside of GCW, I don't know like who it's like a main driver for right now. I think like the biggest hit to Triller TV going away would be GCW. But would there be an opportunity to sell off assets piece by piece, and who would buy it? So for me, Anthem, which is potentially owned by Northern Pacific Group or private equity backed, is listed by PitchBook. The parent company of TNA Wrestling has demonstrated an appetite for acquisition and growth with a focus on fighting leagues, media channels, and content distribution. TNA has maintained discipline in focusing its streaming efforts on TNA Plus services, even taking a step out of YouTube Premium. TNA's infrastructure is currently managed by a division of Endeavor. Triller would fit well under Anthem's portfolio. Anthem, which has flirted with distributing smaller leagues under TNA Plus, would have access to and potential relationships with promotions across the spectrum of wrestling and fight leagues. With TNA and Women's Invicta as its anchor, access TV, the Fight Network, distributed platforms, and social media can support Triller Plus TV subscription. That's my reports. The most obvious one that makes sense, especially in terms of distribution, they've really grown in a force. I don't sorry, like the tier. I think they would just like cut that out. And we would look at like, okay, what deals does Triller have to distribute TNA? Let's pick that up, like to complement what we already have to distribute TNA. Let's see what we could do with AEW Plus. I think we could work with Game Changer, that sort of thing. They have a lot of momentum in their own right. But let's talk to them about some of the type of events that we promote to see if that's aligned. So that would be like, if somebody's going to buy them, would make the most sense. Cyber Agent, they have the resources. The question is, do they want to invest more on the fight sports pro wrestling side? Do you want to take that moonshot or not? TKO, I don't know. Would they want to work with, they already have their own platforms, so maybe maybe Endeavor would want to build out a service that hosts and do something like this, but that would be, like a unique thing. Bushi Road, obviously they have New Japan World. Their fighting things, their sports, as we talked about, is soft. Would they want to invest more in that sort of thing? I don't see it. Who else has these sort of services? ESPN Plus, I think a service like this grows with niches, but if they're going to be looking for niches, I think that it would make a lot more sense for them to buy something like Flow Sports. And I think ultimately Flow Sports gets acquired by a bigger sports streaming platform. And then there's Fubo, which has 100 plus sports channels, but I don't think the fight model works for them. What do you think, John?
Yeah, that's a tough one. I don't think TKO. I think they just got too much. Yeah, I don't know. They almost feel like the Zone, right? I feel like that would probably be something that could just gobble them up and just put them into what they already do seamlessly. So that's what, if I had to guess, I would probably think the Zone.
Yeah, I think one of four outcomes just breaks off, and then the smaller promotions try and do their own thing. Maybe some of them that have existing relationships with Defy work with Defy on demand, that sort of thing. The AEW Plus, they'll find their own host, and can do their own thing from there. I think Anthem might kick the tires with that. The Zone, I think certainly would, but I don't see anyone else outside of new investment group that we're not aware of trying something like this.
What about Limitless? What's going on with Limitless Wrestling?
Yes, so we're back on our radar. The question was last year when we had two podcasts devoted to the Coliseum shows, because it was so unique at the time, was, under new ownership, would they return? And they are returning. So curious to follow this once again. Something else that we discussed with the Limitless Brass was their interest in distributing in all forms and seeing value in local TV still, and they've done it, and be interesting to see as they continue to grow. They're on in Portland, Maine, Westbrook, Maine, Bethel, Maine, Longmeadow, Massachusetts, Enfield, Connecticut, and then far field, why not, Fargo, North Dakota, and Wisconsin Rapids, Wisconsin.
What about MLW? Seems like some departures.
Yeah, this kind of feels evergreen, John. From PW Insider, they're expected to be a number of departures. We're told there'll be several exits over the next several weeks as part of what was described to PW Insider as a roster refresh. Promotion is looking to bring in some bigger names on a more consistent basis, and given that they only have so many events, the decision was made to not leave talent sitting on the bench. The promotion is next running in New York City with Matt Riddle versus Kent Expected. Obviously, like as we talked about extensively before, it just doesn't make sense to have like a number of talents under contract. I know you need for like your promotional materials and champions and whatever, but like between 5 and 7 talents who have like contracts that MLW gets first rights of like booking them and so on, and enough to make it worth their while, at least for a year, that they don't go somewhere else, that they can't use them anymore, obviously WWE, AEW, and depending what. But John, you were breaking the news just this week. Yes. Yep. So what's the long and the short of it? What was going on with MLW and why is he going?
So technically his contract runs out June 1st, but he will be on the show War Chamber on June 7th. So obviously they have a handshake deal for that. But he said that they literally said to him, "We love you, but if you want to make more money, you can seek free agency," and they didn't resign him to his contract. So they still want to use him, but he's open if he finds a contract for more money to go elsewhere. So interesting on their part for a former world champion.
Yeah, and I think like for him, his time, like similar to Alex Hammerstone, although he's returned, and certainly Fatu, if you're in that position to be spotlighted for like 18 months and like break out in a way you haven't broken out before, that's like a great opportunity. And then if you can get somewhere else, it's financially and for your career growth, it makes sense. So good. I wish him all the best, and I think he should be well positioned now to go on to greener pastures.
And finally, what's going on with our buddies over at Masked Republic?
Yeah, so an interesting licensing deal. Always something going on. Priest Frey Tormenta. Of course, the legendary story, which was even inspired Nacho Libre, the wrestling pastor who wrestled to earn money to help orphan children. He will have licensed and branded merchandise through Masked Republic. So another cool deal for them, but certainly we'd like to take a look with Masked Republic as things sort out what it all means with WWE acquiring AAA and talents being booked in the U.S. and North American markets.
Good call. Very intrigued and interested on that. But Lavie, let's wrap this bad boy up and head towards the plugs. You can follow me on Twitter and Instagram at 2Man Power Trip. How about you, Lavie?
Yeah, follow me on X, Lavie Mark, LAVIE, Follow my long form articles, and I'm becoming more prolific since I graduated, John, about 3 or 4 articles now. LionCubJobSearch.com. Check us out on LinkedIn, The Business of the Business. It's constantly growing. If you're a listener and you enjoy this podcast, like, review, rate, and sponsor. If you want to see us, we're going to reach 250, but if you want us to reach 500 and want to help keep that going, do reach out, especially if you have a business and something you want to promote.
All right. Awesome, Lavie. Thank you, everybody out there, for listening. See you right back here next week for another Business